We try and open up people's minds to what can be possible, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you have to make up your mind as to what you actually want that's going to make you happy. And the first step is not comparing yourself to others.
Hey, Difference Maker. Welcome back to the Difference Maker Revolution podcast. And we are here with Ronan and Jeanine and Jono today. So today we're going to talk about an interesting topic because a lot of people, I think, are a little fearful to share what success looks like for them because they're always comparing themselves to other people. But one of the principles we have at the Difference Maker Revolution is that you define your own success. So what does that mean?
What does that mean, defining your own success? Well, I think we should explain what it doesn't mean first. And you've sort of alluded to it there, Jono, in the introduction, where, you know, Jeanine, we see this all the time, right? We see people comparing themselves to someone else, right? And saying, oh, look at that person, you know, they have an average of whatever it is. And how come I don't have an average like that? And, you know, and often when you look beneath the bonnet, the person who's talking about the big average they have, it's an average of 1 year, you know. So it's really interesting concept in that you shouldn't compare yourself to others because you actually don't see beneath the bonnet of what others have or are going through. What's your thoughts on that, Jeanine? Have you seen that?
I have seen that, you know, and it's people. It's always interesting. Like when you hear people talk about their numbers or their success, they only share part of the story. You know, it's kind of like social media, right? People only tell the good things on social media. No one tells the bad things usually. And so it's the same thing when people are sharing their averages, their sales. They only share the good. They don't share the no sales. They don't share the cost it takes to make that sale. Which I always find to be, you know, a very important number. We talk about that, right? Like, what's your actual profit? So, you know, and everybody has a different view of what they want. But yeah, no, sharing numbers when you don't fully share is always interesting. And it's twofold. Like, one, obviously you want to be able to inspire people what's possible, you know? And so we have members that have incredible sales. And I think it's really cool when they can share what is possible, because I think it feeds that belief that people will invest in portraiture and photography and creating these experiences for their families. So I think it's nice to hear, because sometimes we doubt it, you know, or, you know, and but then I also think it goes the other side, where then it can be like, oh, I'll never be able to do that. And, oh, they're so much more successful than me. And success is not defined by your sales at all, or your average order. Well, it's defined, I guess it could be defined by your overall sales, but it's not defined by your average. I mean, Ronan, you talk about that one client that you had in your other business where their average was 400 pounds, but they made millions because of the volume that they did, you know? And so it's very interesting to me how photographers define success. And I think that's part of what you want to break through today, so people can redefine that, so they can be inspired and feel good about what they're doing, but then also, you know, not be discouraged by what they hear others do.
I think it's about more than just that, though. It's about being like, some people just don't want to have, you know, to scale and make millions. They're happy with serving X number of clients per week and paying themselves, you know, 30, 40, 50 grand a year and spending the rest of the time with family or doing whatever. Like it comes down to a lifestyle as well, I think, and what you actually want from your business.
But isn't that why we as a team, like all four of the coaching mentors, like we try and open up people's minds to what can be possible, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you have to make up your mind as to what you actually want that's going to make you happy. And the first step is not comparing yourself to others. No, like I had a call, remember, literally earlier today, and you know, he was comparing himself to others rather than trying to figure out, so what does he actually want and what's going to make him happy, and looking at what others are doing, not based on the gap between where he is and where they are, but looking at what can I learn from them to get to where I want to get, and I think, for me, there's a really important steps you need to go through to define your own success. So where I like to start with people is I like to understand what vision do they have for 5 years out, right? So you guys have seen us do this with members, right? Where we get into a time machine and we go forward 5 years, and it's not based on what their sales number will be, right? It's based on what life do they want to have, which reflects what you're talking about, Jonathan, in terms of course, there's a money element to that. But like some people's vision is, well, I currently work 6 days a week. I only want to work 3 days a week. So I can spend 1 day on the golf course and I can spend the other 3 days with family, right? And that's their definition of success, And then there's other people who want to work 7 days a week and have a studio in every major city in the US or in the UK or wherever, right? And none of those are better than the other. I think that's the key thing. None of those is better than the other. But the important thing is to go through that process and understand, well, what is your vision for your life? And then how does your business, what business do you need to create to deliver on that desire for your life? And you don't see people doing this a lot in our industry who can actually say, well, this is what I want in 5 years' time. Like they might say things like, well, I want to have an average of 10,000. They've no idea how many clients they want, or they don't know what the result of that will be, other than what we often see, which is just a way to boast and say, look how successful I am. When you look beneath the bonnet, they may not be successful at all. I'm not saying you're not, we're just saying you may not be, right? But understanding that vision as to where you want to go, what you see your life. And we have the only way to do that is literally to go through a process to figure out what do you want your life to be, and working through that with a coach and a coaching team to understand what that is. And of all of our members, everyone's is different. I don't think we've any member where it's actually the same. Zero, zilch. So it has to be, and that's a good thing, that's a good thing.
I think as well that, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole really of talking about attaching ego to numbers and stuff, but people don't think about it. Like if you have a business that's doing 300K a year and your average is 5K, so you're serving 60 clients a year, average order, right? And you have a business that's doing 300K a year, your average is 1,500. That business has served like over 3 times the number of clients, so has infinitely more exposure to clients and experience than the one doing less clients. I think that's an important lesson as well, is that the more exposure you have to clients and doing something, the more experienced you actually are. So I think that factors into it too.
Yeah, and I don't want to go down that rabbit hole on purpose. I don't want to make this all about numbers, defining your own success. I think the numbers are part of it. But I think having a vision, like Jeanine, you had a clear vision for what you wanted to achieve from your business, right?
I do, yeah. And it's and I state it repeatedly to you guys, and and to my team here. And I want to go through life with my clients. That is my vision. That is my why. I want them here all the time. I want to see the kids growing up. I want to see them multiple times a year. I want to see them for every holiday, for every birthday. And so that is part of my why. That's what makes me happy. What drives me. And so that obviously affects the way I price. It affects the way I market. It affects the products that we offer, and it affects the services that we create, and how we innovate what we're doing. So it does. But I have a very clear vision of what I want.
You've just jumped on to sort of, for me, one of the next steps in all of this to find your own success. And you've just told us there about who you want to serve, right? But importantly, when you're figuring out who you want to serve, is why do you want to serve them? So, you've told us who you want to serve, but the why, the purpose behind that, um, is really important to understand, because, business is not easy, right? But for me, the benefits outweigh any of the negatives of owning and running a business, right? For me, and it's not for everybody, right? But for me, it's certainly the positives far outweigh the negatives. And I think you've seen that too, Jeanine, and you've seen that too, Jono. That but it's really, really important that you can have a vision for what you want your life to be, and you can have a vision for what your business needs to do to deliver on that. But unless you've got a true purpose and a why behind who you want to serve, and why is it important to you that that's who you serve, right? I think you are more likely to fail if you don't know that, and you're far more likely to succeed if you do know it. And for me, you can have the vision, which we explain when we're doing this, like it's like getting out your wide angle lens on your camera, right? It's the big picture. It's the big landscape, right? That of where we want to be in 5 years' time. But your why, which is like your macro lens, you're deep diving into your heart, and biologically, it's not in fact your heart; it's a part of your limbic brain, as Simon Sinek teaches us, to understand like what actually gives you the energy to keep going. Why? What makes this important? What makes this vision important? And it's not about money. That's the result. Money is important, but that's not the reason why you do it. That's the result. And when you combine the vision as to where you want to go, and you've got a compass for that, right? So you've got your wide angle lens, and then you get your micro lens, and you look in to your heart and your purpose and that part of your brain that can't verbalize, but you eventually discover, why this excites you. Why is this important to you? And the how you do it and what you do to make it happen, everyone can describe, but you really have to take some time with somebody, with a coach that can help you discover your true purpose and your why. And at Difference Maker, we do that with people, right? That we help them discover what their purpose and their why is, because that's equally as important.
Well, it for sure, Ronan, because if you can't borrow someone else's why, and we see a lot of people who make that mistake. They see someone having success in a certain genre or niche, however you want to say it, and they're like, oh, well, they're getting success there. I'm going to do that. They don't have a why. They don't have a purpose. They don't have a story, and they fail miserably because it's not them. It's not what they're supposed to be doing. And instead of taking the time and effort to focus on their why and discovering it that way, they just want to borrow someone else's and think that will bring success, but it doesn't.
And we've had members who've done that, right? Like we have a member who told us that they started in newborn photography because a coach told them it's a great way to make money, right? Fail. It fails because that wasn't their vision. 2, it wasn't their why. And 3, money is a lousy motivator. It's a lousy motivator. So we've seen this, guys. You don't do something because it's successful for someone else. It's got to be something you want to do. And Jono and I, we've talked a lot about this recently about whys. It's come up again, and we've been talking about it. And when you have your why, there's multiple ways you can deliver on that why. Right? It should not just be related to photography. But of course, photography and making a difference and delivering a wellness experience with photography can be the how and what you do to deliver on your why. Yeah. So it doesn't go the other way around. It doesn't go around, well, what I do is I'm a photographer and this is how I do photography and that informs my why. It's the other way around. And your why, you can achieve it not just through photography, but through other things as well, right? But you might choose to do it through photography and through difference maker experiences. But it's it's hard to discover your why, because when you can do this with people and the reason why is just biology. Your why comes from a part of your brain that can't verbalize. So we have to use other techniques to see patterns in what your why might be and work with you to do that. And even then, when somebody says, well, I've listened to what you said and I think this might be your why, it won't immediately resonate, because you're going to have to think and reflect on it, because the brain has to process it and can't verbalize it to tell you, yes, that's correct. It's really interesting. It really is interesting.
What happens if my why is something that I just can't make a sustainable business out of? Like, if my why is taking pictures of robins sitting in the tree in the forest, like if I'm a landscape photographer, nature, what if my why I just will never really make money off or have a sustainable business from?
Okay, so the first thing I would say is that photographing robins, if we take that as an example, right, or wild birds or whatever it is, right, that's not a why. That's what you do.
Right.
Right. And that's often people mix those up. So what I like to do is I start with people and I say, so what do you do? Right. And then I'll ask them, when they tell me that, I'll say, so how do you do that? Right. And then I'll say, so why do you do that? And 99 out of 100 people don't know why. Right. So it's important to be aware of those distinctions between what you do, how you do it, and why you do it. And often when we go through that, their why, they haven't thought about their why and discovered their why, so they may change now, right? Because a lot of it is a lot of that can be do with, I'm not saying it can't be your why, but a lot of it can be, well, I just enjoy doing it. I'm not sure why I enjoy doing it. And that's okay to have a hobby, right? But if your goal is that you want to create a sustainable, profitable business out of that, right? That's a different lens to view that through, right? So it's important to distinguish that, and discovering your why. Like the leader in this is Simon Sinek, right? Or his Golden Circle. Right? I've just described to you as Simon Sinek's Golden Circle, right? So get his book, Know Your Why, or Discover Your Why, whatever it's called, and it'll give you a clear indication of it. But you do need to. It's rare you can discover your why on your own, right? That you need somebody who knows this to work with you to try and discover it. It's where you figure it out on your own.
Yeah, because you don't go deep enough. You don't
Correct.
go deep enough.
Correct. And that's just human nature, right? Because we teach photographers to discover what clients secretly want, right? Because they tell us what they think they want, right? Rather than what they secretly want, right? And that's just the way we're wired. We're wired that way as humans. And it's just part of it, and I know that we teach, and Steve teaches about discovering your client's why. For me, it's really hard to discover a client's why unless you know your own why.
So why do we need to know our why?
You need to know your why, because your why brings you happiness. Your why because it gives you a purpose. It gives you a purpose beyond the absolute basic human desire, the first of which is food and water, and the second which is shelter, right? But once you start to deliver on your food and your water and your shelter, right, we all as humans crave to have a greater purpose, right? Which can be, love and relationships is the next step, but then we want to get to a step where, we actually feel that we're making a difference. We're leaving the world a better place than we entered it. Every human desires that, right? But you have to go through steps to get there. But understanding your why can actually help deliver those first two steps too. Because when you know your purpose And if you're linking it to a business that you have, right, it doesn't have to be, but if it's linked to a business that you have, right, the end result will be that your clients will reward you because of the difference you're making. And part of the reason why you're making that difference is because you are so passionate about doing it yourself. It's part of your why. Everyone's gone silent. I've dumbed you all into silence. Come on, guys, you've heard this.
I know. I was waiting for Jonathan, unmuted his mic. I thought he was going to say something. He opened his mouth.
I'm speechless.
Why are you
That's
speechless?
Unusual feat. Yeah, why are you speechless?
I just have nothing to say. You've talked about it so well that I've run out of questions.
Well, do you want to fill in some of the other gaps of defining your success? Okay. So once you know where you want to go and you understand your purpose behind it, right? It's still a bit aspirational, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So you have to figure out, so what do I need to do now to deliver on my why and my vision, right? And, we talk a lot, don't we, Jeanine, about the best way to eat an elephant?
One bite at a time.
One small piece at a time, exactly. Because if you try and if you look at an elephant and say, oh, I have to eat all that in one go, you're likely never going to start, right? And of course, I'm making the assumption that we eat elephants, which we don't. But if you did, right? So it's important then that once we've got that 5-year vision, we have to break it down into shorter targets, based on the next 5 years. So what are we going to do in the next year, right? But even that's too big, right? That's sort of a middle-sized elephant. So we've got to break that down then into smaller pieces too, and what we do, we're great believers in the 12-week year, right? We operate it in our business. We encourage photographers to do it in their business. And that idea is that you just break the year target into a 12-week year, but it's more than just breaking it down into a financial target. It's adopting the mindset that we do with a year, that we need to get this done in the year, because then the year's over and we're starting again. Yeah. And it breaks it down, as the 12-week year call it, into shorter sprints, right? But then that's even too big, right? Because we've 3 months, and we're human, right? So sometimes we're coming to the end of a 12-week year now at the end of September, right? But no matter, even when you know this stuff and you've got 3 months to do it, it's human nature sometimes to put it off. So the last month, and then you don't get everything done. So we got to break that 12-week year, those 3 months, into weekly goals. Well, weekly projects first, right? A goal, a project that defines that. And as you've taught us all, Jeanine, then a project is just a project, and it's different than a task, right? So then we've got to break that project into individual tasks and then assign those tasks to a week to achieve it by within those 12 weeks. And nobody's saying this is easy, right? But Jeanine, you're really good at this. You're really good at the planning and breaking it down and all that. When you do it, it just makes it easier for you and your team. Can you give us an example of that as to how it makes it easier for you and your team?
Well, you're not constantly running behind the 8 ball, so let's break down something simple like, us right now working on our website to get it switched over and updated for AI searching as opposed to just Google searching, right? And so that's a project, and it involves researching and understanding and then programming and then writing. And so you can't just say, my task is to update my website for AI searches. That's a project. That's not a task, right? And so if that's just your project and your goal and you have it on your list of things to do, you're never going to get it done, right? You need to break down, all right, what does that actually involve? And then when you break down those individual tasks, you either assign them all to yourself, if it's you, yourself, and you, or you assign out those pieces of those projects to different members of your team to get them done, and when they need to get done by, right? So, I mean, that's just, even if we want to take Christmas, for example, that's a huge project, booking our Christmas calendar and our Christmas sessions that we started last year for this year, so if I just had Christmas bookings on my list, which we have a lot of people who say I need Christmas bookings, or that is a huge project that involves many small little tasks. Like, I'll give you an example. Yesterday I was not in the studio. One of Betsy's assigned tasks for yesterday and today is contacting all of our clients who did Christmas last year who are not already booked for Christmas this year. And she called them and she texted them, and that is a task in a project of being fully booked for Christmas.
And then we all crave, to achieve any plan, we all crave and need some accountability, right? And particularly if you're working on your own, right, that can be difficult, right, to be accountable to yourself. It's easier to be accountable to others than be accountable to yourself. So, Jonathan, that's why we have the accountability edge call in Inner Circle, right? Just tell people a little bit about the accountability edge call. And then if I want to get involved with help to make this happen, what I need to do.
Yeah. So like you said, like staying accountable to yourself, especially if you're working by yourself and you're, all on your own, and it's just you and you're doing everything. It's tough, right? But the accountability edge call that happens in the Inner Circle every week basically allows you to network with a community of people who want to see you succeed, allows you to share your commitments for the week, allows you to share your wins for the week, and that ultimately gives you a support network, but also gives you an outlet for you to stay accountable to actually achieving what you want to achieve and actually achieving your defined level of success. And there's no judgment on that. There's no judgment on the wins, big or small. There's no judgment on the goals. And I think it helps our members to, have their level of success quicker than anything else out there. So to take part in the accountability edge call, all you need to do is be a member of the Inner Circle. So just click the button below and get signed up to the Inner Circle today.
All right. I've really enjoyed, as you know, this is one of my favorite topics. So I've really enjoyed sharing this with you, Jeanine, with you, Jonathan. So thank you all to our listeners, and we'll see you in the Inner Circle. Bye for now.
Bye, guys.
See you soon.